Inside the Gamecocks podcast, JC Sherberton with you. Emergency podcast. I don't have the siren effect, but I don't think you guys care. I don't think you care about the intro. Had to trash today's episode. I was just about to put it up, and then major breaking news. So for those of you that, had some questions for the iHelp Consulting mailbag, I'll get to those in tomorrow's episode. A lot of them were about this topic, though. Gamecocks, we told you they wanted to land a transfer portal quarterback. There were some names out there for a while, and the Gamecocks landed, at least from a publicity standpoint, probably a raw talent standpoint too, Spencer Rattler, former five-star quarterback, state of Arizona prospect, was a Heisman contender at Oklahoma, left after getting beat out by Caleb Williams this year. Lots of smoke around his commitment and his interest in the Gamecocks recently. And the Gamecocks also got Austin Stogner, which is also a really big commit. Like, folks, Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks beat Ohio State on this kid. And I've said many times, sometimes when you see the transfer portal crystal balls these days, some of our guys just kind of automatically gravitate towards the biggest brand. So with this commitment, there you go. Brand doesn't always win out. So gigantic additions at two positions of need. I'm going to bring in Hale McGranahan, my guy from thebigspur.com. We talk about Hale all the time. Hale, yes. He was way out in front of this story tonight. And Hale, just your general thoughts about these two pickups, man. I mean, we talked about the portal a lot. The portal giveth, the portal taketh away, but it sure gave to the Gamecocks this evening.
Yeah, I don't even really know how to start trying to sum it all up, because it came together kind of quickly this evening, at least with what I was able to report, and move forward with saying that it looked like Spencer Rattler and Austin Stogner could be coming to South Carolina. And fortunately for our readers on the site, they had an idea something was happening, and I don't know that we even knew that it was going to be happening tonight, up until pretty close to before the tweets and Instagram posts went out from those two guys. But just gigantic, massive news. I as far as like biggest news since I've been covering South Carolina since 2016, like this, in terms of like guys committing, this tops it all, and I guess we can get into that later on. But as far as what Rattler brings to the table, he's incredible talent. I mean, when you're a number one quarterback prospect coming out of high school, it's there for a reason. And it was kind of funny to me when I was looking back through his profile, trying to get a story pre-written and ready on Rattler, and saw he was the number one pro style quarterback in the country. And I was like, well, this guy's pretty good with his legs too. I don't know why he's wasn't a dual threat, but I guess that's why 24/7 did away with those.
Because it's all the same.
Last year or so.
He was getting, around that time, Kyler Murray was being projected as the number one pick in the draft. And if you remember, he was at Oklahoma. And I think a lot of people thought next Kyler Murray. And you're right. I mean, I was glad that's one of the things I'm glad they did away with, because I think that, these days, in college, your better quarterbacks all have legs, and really in the pros too. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is probably one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I mean, in the NFL, right? And he does some things with his legs, and certainly Kyler Murray, who I listed and all that. But yeah, probably a wealth of material to look up for this guy. And and I've been pretty clear. I don't have a problem with the FCS transfers and the group of five transfers last year, but I would imagine it was probably a little easier to get some info for your article on Rattler than some of those guys. Like Carlin Splatel, who came from Assumption, who probably didn't have much media.
Right. Yeah, certainly plenty out there to digest on Spencer Rattler. Shoot, even Stogner, too, who's, I think, second team All Big 12 in 2020, playing under Shane Beamer as his position coach, who's, 6'4", 6'5", 250 pounds, runs well for a guy that big, and has incredible ball skills. Probably would be getting ready to go to the league if he didn't have this health issue as a result of an injury. I think it was during a game kind of set him back a little ways. So, I think back to last year around this time after Beamer first got hired, JC, and our readers at the Big Spur, all they could talk about was, well, who's Beamer going to get to come with them? And I think there was some disappointment for some folks that they didn't get anybody from Oklahoma last year. But sure enough, this year with Lincoln Riley going to Southern Cal and things playing out the way they did for Rattler and Caleb Williams at Oklahoma, I guess a little late, but better late than never is what I'm sure a lot of folks out there in Gamecock country are saying tonight. It's something, man. Wow. It's crazy to think that we're sitting here having this conversation about these two guys 2 days before the early signing period, by the way.
Yeah, no doubt. Spencer Rattler, assuming he wins the starting quarterback job at South Carolina, he will be the first state of Arizona product to start at quarterback for the Gamecocks. It's Mike Hold. I think Mike Hold took his last snap in 1985. Of course, he was on that really good 1984 team, the 10-2 Black Magic year. He was from Arizona. So it's been kind of few and far between. I remember the Gamecocks under Spurrier, they recruited a running back named Jamal Womble, I think, out of the state of Arizona. But really, Gamecocks don't do a whole lot of recruiting out there. Obviously, I think with the portal these days, though, and Hale, you've been all over it. The Gamecocks, got a linebacker out of Mississippi this morning, Stone Blanton. I'm going to ask you about him in a second. They got a defensive end out of D.C. Or linebacker. I'm sorry, Baltimore. Just Jayshawn Barham. Landon Sampson's coming in from Texas. So this group Shane Beamer has, they're not afraid to really expand the base, which when you kind of look at what North Carolina's doing in North Carolina and Virginia and, of course, the in-state crowd, I think this year, Hale, and used to cover Clemson, you've got two guys from Greenville County and two receivers. Clemson's usually going to win that battle, right? As unfortunate as the Antonio Williams thing was for South Carolina. But, you got to go somewhere to get guys. And I think that's part of being good at recruiting is, maybe sometimes you have to expand the base. Maybe sometimes you have to knock on some doors that as a program, maybe they're not used to doing. And when you have success, it's extra sweet because all those plane trips and I'm not saying they flew to Arizona to see this kid or anything. With Rattler, it kind of evolved a different way. But, those plane trips to Baltimore and all that certainly pay off when you're able to bring home the bacon.
Yeah, I think technically the last guy out of Arizona, even though he's originally from Compton, California, LA area is his home, be Keeson Nixon. He was Arizona Western and Community College or Junior College, whatever it's called, back in 2017, I guess it would have been. So there's your last, previous Arizona connection for South Carolina on the recruiting trail. But yeah, you mentioned Stone Blanton and Jayshawn Barham coming in. Those are two really nice pieces to add to the front seven. And Barham's a guy who'll play, defensive end / outside linebacker or edge, buck, whatever you want to call him, and help fill a need there when they're losing Kingsley Mbare and Aaron Sterling from that starting 11 from this year's team. And they have a couple guys in the class currently that are edge type players, but maybe not quite as big a player, like literally physically as big as Barham, who's like 6'3.5" and like 235, maybe depending on what he had for breakfast. And Bland's kind of, I hate to say he's a bit of a throwback because that's the signal for like, hey, he's a white guy, but he's like 6'1", 235. And just physical as all hell, and middle linebacker all day. He's fun to watch those highlights. He destroys some of those private school kids out there in Mississippi, but
he tees off on them, man. I saw one today, or a play in particular where the running back is going in the opposite direction, or maybe it's a screen pass, and he reads it and comes up like you see this blur coming in off the left of your screen. He just obliterates this kid. I felt bad for the guy, but yeah, Stone Blanton, who obviously was committed to Mississippi State for baseball. I picked up a little intel on him this weekend, and you and I were talking, and the more I thought about that conversation I had with my source, and kind of the more I was reading the tea leaves, I felt better and better about it. And then last night, of course, our Mississippi State crowd said, "Yep, South Carolina's getting him." So that's a big deal. People don't really understand sometimes. The state of Mississippi, probably for the past 10 years, has been relatively difficult for out-of-state programs to go get players out of it. And I'm talking high school, not junior college. High school, Mississippi State kind of upped the ante, I guess, a few years back. And you'll have one that goes to Alabama or a couple that go to LSU every now and then. Of course, N'Kobe Dean, who's a freak, goes to Georgia. He's from Mississippi. But it's not as easy as maybe it once was when that state was sort of hemorrhaging players. So, it says something when you're able to go to Madison, Mississippi, and get a player like that. All right, so back to Rattler. So for those that aren't members of the BigSpur.com but do listen to the podcast, and we love you guys too. Every Monday night, Hale and John Whittle, and occasionally some of the other ones of us will contribute, but it's primarily those two. They put together a big piece called the VIP Room. And so I look on the site tonight, Hale, and I say, and it's like transfer portal update. This could not wait for the VIP Room. So, so you gave him a little teaser on it. And so just tell me kind of how it unfolded. What made you decide to go ahead and stick that out there and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, oddly enough, as I was sitting down to start writing some of what I had formulated in my mind about what I wanted to have for the VIP room, I got hit up by one of my contacts and more or less said, "Yeah, Spencer Rattler and Austin Stogner are coming. Like it's happening." And it wasn't a done deal. Like the way it was framed to me, it was like there's still some stuff that has to come together. I don't really know what it is, frankly. Maybe it was just like a couple conversations like between Rattler and Stogner to say, "All right, we're doing this, right? You ready? Yeah. Tonight? You good? You don't have anything going on? We can do it tonight. Okay, let's call coach." Like that might have been all there was to it, for all I know. Then, sure enough, I can't remember the exact timeline. I have to get back and look at my phone. But yeah, within the next or the following hour or two, I got more confirmation. Like, yeah, Rattler's coming. He just just committed. So it's happening either tonight or tomorrow. And I was trying to help my wife fix dinner and eat a little bit with her and work on a pre-write for Rattler and try to get something going with Stogner, all the while trying to get the VIP room out. And I've got Whittle over here telling me if these guys could just wait till at least 8:30 so we can add a little bit more to the VIP room, that would be great. And sure enough, they gave us till about 9, I think it was, when they started sending out their tweets and Instagram posts saying they're from Carolina. So they, without knowing it, they did us a solid. So appreciate it from those guys for letting us get out another little something for our folks at the Big Spur. But yeah, we heard, I guess it was last week. It was last week. It was about Wednesday. Whittle had heard something about somebody told him they'd seen Rattler on campus at South Carolina. And so I did some checking around, and I was told he was not on campus, but did hear that he had a virtual visit set up later that night, actually, with South Carolina. So we're able to put that news out there first as well and kind of be ahead of things there. And like you alluded to a little while ago, JC, we continued to hear a little bit more here and there on those, or I guess, and with Rattler to be specific. And yeah, just sort of kind of pieces fell into place as we're reporting the news and sort of culminated in tonight, and these guys doing it. It's, I don't want to make this too much about us, but I'm gonna pat us on the back. We did a hell of a job reporting this stuff for our readers. And anyone who is listening to this podcast, Ryan, is not subscribed to the Big Spur. You would have been able to read this stuff.
Yeah, you'd have known it was coming. You'd have had a heads up. All right, so we'll go back in time a little bit because this is kind of a funny story. While we're on the subject of what we do and all that, and then we're going to kind of get into the nitty gritty with the football. So obviously, Antonio Williams committing to Clemson on Friday night was not a welcome development. Arguably the guy that the Gamecocks recruited the hardest at receiver, in-state guy. When Eric Kimry first got there, the Justin Stepp followed him. That was the guy they circled. For a lot of reasons. You kind of want to turn the tide at Dutch Fork, which is now one of the state's premier programs. They have players every year. There was the Jalen Hyatt issue. Kimry went to Dutch Fork. And they get right in it, and it goes for a long, long time. And the stars looked like they were lining for Carolina because Ole Miss was a factor, but then Ole Miss kind of filled up at receiver. Auburn was a factor, but it was Mike Bobo leading the charge, and Mike Bobo left and got fired. So you kind of go in thinking, oh, Carolina, Clemson had an offer, but the whole time we're like, Clemson, as long as they don't offer, everything's good. So then Clemson offers. But then you don't hear much. You still think Carolina's in good shape. The Gamecocks are doing well. They're angling to get the last in-home visit. And then all of a sudden you hear he's completely shut it down. He's not been talking to the Gamecock staff. The in-home with Beamer is off. Beamer didn't even get an in-home. And then he tweets that he's committed to Clemson Friday night. All right, so that's bad. Okay, and that's on top of another basketball season that started with a 24-point loss. That's on top of getting shut out by Clemson on the grid. I mean, it was just kind of your typical deja vu Gamecock experience, right? And you're kind of the bridesmaid with the local guys. But I thought at the time, and the last podcast I released actually was good news, bad news. Because earlier that week, we were told we're getting Jayshon Barham. The Gamecocks are getting Jayshon Barham. So that's a good pickup, right, out of Baltimore. Not a receiver, but, you kind of figure they'll go to the portal. All right, so then, hell, I'm at the bar, okay? I'll just be honest. I'm like up there watching some Army-Navy. Right, watched the Army-Navy game with my girlfriend, and one of the bar owners up here where we live is a Navy graduate. He actually was on the '84 Navy team that upset South Carolina. So he gives me crap. He gives me crap sometimes for wearing my Gamecock stuff. But he's a good guy, and he always has Navy gear for everybody, so I get to go get a free sweatshirt, whatever. And I didn't leave till the bar until right around noon. When I get a text from Brian Doan, our Northeast analyst for 24/7 Sports, that says Barham's going to Maryland. And that in our business, y'all, that's like meltdown city, because that's like an 11th hour switch, right? And so things get a little tough. And it wasn't a good day. And then all of a sudden, Jayshon Barham, after all that, actually commits to the Gamecocks an hour later. An hour after his scheduled announcements, the Gamecocks actually flipped him back. And then you got Stone Blanton today. And on top of that, you have this news tonight. So, hell, what does that tell you about how quickly things can change in this business?
At the drop of a hat, or real quick, I don't know, whatever sounds better is not as cliche. I don't know, man. It's crazy. But that's part of it. That's I think why you and I both do this and have fun doing it, and why so many people read about it and talk about it and want to listen to people talk about it and all that. It's a real life soap opera, man. Reality TV at its finest. for sure. And it's a little frustrating at times, to say the least. I was pretty pissed Saturday once the dust had settled and could move forward with my plans for the afternoon and evening. Just because it was like, you think something's going to happen and you hear something else is going to happen, and you're reporting it all along. And you're not being wrong, quote unquote. So that's the frustrating part on my end of things. But it's still, at the end of the day, I mean, it's not work. It's a job at times, but I'm sitting here wearing sweatpants talking to you right now on a computer about football. It's pretty cool, man. And moments like this when you're covering a team, I think back. You mentioned when I covered Clemson, I think back to the Robert Kimdichie when he committed to Clemson. I remember wow. Chad Simmons and I were both working for Scout at the time and talking about that. He was like, you know what, you're always going to remember what you were doing and how you were covering the number one player in the country and committing to the team you cover. And I was like, yeah, I do. And I remember where I was and what was happening and sort of the fallout that came with that. But yeah, it's fun, man. And I don't really know where I'm going with it other than to say that it's always a good time when you get to follow the ones that people really care about. I mean, no offense to the kids who are kind of local and sort of fly under the radar and aren't big time prospects on the website and don't have a ton of offers. Those are fun to cover too. And you try just as hard to do those right and give those kids their attention and make sure the readers of the site know everything there is to know about them. But these are a little different. The last couple of days, whether it's the two guys this evening from Oklahoma or Stone Bland or Jayshon Barham on Saturday, or hell, even Antonio Williams, even though he didn't come to South Carolina, we still covered them. And there's still a story to tell with them too. So it's fun. It's fun, man.
Exactly. And like you said, we could be working for a living. I could have to, get up at 5 and go punch a clock, instead of doing this. So this is very fun. And covering this program too, it's a program that sort of needed something big and good to happen. And getting a quarterback like this is good. All right. So, and I don't want to get into the offensive coordinator thing today. I'll get into that later this week and kind of the fit. I've kind of said some things about that. But I have to think that Spencer Rattler is probably the odds-on favorite to win the job right now. And we do have one of our listeners that tweeted at us, Hale, Cocky Faithful, that says he kind of got into it with some people. I'm still a Doty believer, but let the best man win. And I'm going to say this, and I'll let you kind of address this. I don't think that this has anything to do with Luke Doty. And I think one of the most unfortunate things around Carolina when it comes to Luke is nobody really wants to give him a chance to breathe. They want him to be a superstar right now. And you have to think about the 2020 season. He's learning Mike Bobo's offense, which is, probably not as complicated as the one they tried to run this year, but it's still a college offense and a little more complex than the one they ran at Myrtle Beach. He's thrown into the daggum fray at the end on a team that was gutted. And then he comes out this year. He looks like the starter, and he suffers a broken foot. It just really looks sort of cattywampus playing on that foot all year in this system. I don't think it's a bad idea because Spencer Rattler comes and does his job this year and plays like he's supposed to play. He's one and done. All right, because he was going to be one and done this year. Had he won the Heisman at Oklahoma and things worked out. I don't think it's a bad thing, Hale, if Luke Doty spends the season completely healthy as the number 2 quarterback at South Carolina, learning the position a little bit more. I don't see how that does anything but help him with his development. And I think people either want to anoint him as a Heisman Trophy contender, or they want to like trash him and say he's no good. I think he just needs some time. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and you didn't mention how he had that little experiment last year playing wide receiver.
Yeah, no doubt.
Going into the season, and for the first part of the season, then that kind of just ended. And so and by the time he actually got to play on the field, the team was a shell of itself. They didn't have a full-time head coach, and it was just a train wreck of a season. Like, they talk about opting out. Like, South Carolina football should have opted out after Will Muschamp got fired, because that was just atrocious. And nothing against the guys who stuck around and played and all that. Like, they had a ton of injuries too. Like, that was part of the problem, and part of what got them to that point. But anyway, so I was as big a Luke Doty proponent as far as like what I thought he would be coming out of high school, and even went so far as to say, like, I thought he was the most talented high school prospect South Carolina had signed in several years, and that included Ryan Helinski as a prospect, and Jake Bentley and Brandon McElwain and some of those guys. And I still feel that way before Spencer Rattler, obviously. But he's had just kind of some bad luck, and timing has just not worked out the way it is. Oh, by the way, 2020 being what it was, with guys having to leave campus in the spring and couldn't show back up until midway through August or whatever it was, or late in July. I can't remember exactly. So there's a lot of potential for development that was just lost. So that set him back. Then, this year he has probably not the best spring game, but I mean, it's only a spring game, and there's not a lot that you want to try to take out of that, especially if guys going out there and playing well. I mean, how many spring game all-stars have you seen over the years playing at South Carolina, JC? I'm sure there are too many to even name.
I call it the spring game MVP is always the winner of the Taqi Muhammad Award for me.
There you go, the Taqi Muhammad Award. Yeah, and Luke wasn't going to win that, and Jason Brown probably kind of won that this year,
he did,
or otherwise. Then by all accounts, Luke is clearly going to be the guy going into the season. Then he gets his foot stepped on halfway through camp, and frankly, he should not have come back as soon as he did, but he wanted to, and the team was, the staff was ready to throw him out there. All parties were consenting, so they did it, and it looked okay at times, but other times not so much, and they finally pulled the plug on it, and it just bad luck and timing, not great timing for him, and knowing Luke Doty like I do, I've known the kid since he was a freshman in high school. I don't think he's letting it get him down. I don't think the Spencer Rattler news is going to make him go jump into the portal anytime soon. I think he's got the ability to stay patient, as long as folks watching the program, who follow the program, can do the same. I think everything will be fine at the end of the day.
He and Gauthier and Braden Davis should be fine. I do wonder about Jason Brown a little bit. Yeah. Just because he's got one more year, and I do think Jason Brown, actually, if you look at all the quarterbacks that played this season, I thought he was the best, at least the most effective. He led Carolina to their two biggest wins of the year. I think that kid does have talent and ability, and he did graduate from University of South Carolina today. And so if I'm reading the rules correctly, he's got another free transfer, because he's now a graduate, and you can grad transfer somewhere. And that gives you two free ones. And I was talking to a contact tonight, and they don't really know what he's going to do, but, obviously I think he'll, finish it out, hopefully in the bowl game. Cause I don't want to, I think he's the best shot at winning the bowl if you're the Gamecocks, but I do think it could potentially impact him. Then again, sometimes folks surprise me as far as players go and their decisions, especially at quarterback. But yeah, I think Luke Doty's going to be fine. And I would just encourage fans out there. It's not with Rattler being older like he is, and Luke is still relatively young, keep in mind it's going to benefit Luke Doty if even if this were Max Johnson that came in and started. Hell, I started wondering after Luke went back out with a foot injury and was shut down for the season. I really started wondering if by chance, he did need 1 year. And that's when I sort of started thinking, well, maybe they should go and look into a portal quarterback, or if Jason Brown can do it or something like that, just because his development, he hasn't had that full season. You play hurt 1 year, you're kind of at wide receiver, and then not as a true freshman during a COVID season that was just crazy. I think settling in for Luke Doty and learning the position and being the backup and getting ready to take over would do him some good. Austin Stogner, man. And look, I want to make it clear to everybody out there. I like Nick Muse, and I thought, quite frankly, they should have thrown the ball to Nick a little more this year. I know he was probably a little frustrated by that. I think he's athletic, and I think he's going to get a cup of coffee in the NFL. As much as I like Nick Muse, this Austin Stogner kid, man, I mean, these Texas kids play 7-on-7 almost all year. This guy is just so skilled and sure-handed. He's like a big wide receiver out there playing tight end. Now, this was one that's been rumored for a while. Shane Beamer was his position coach at Oklahoma. And wow, pulled the trigger tonight. And like I said at the top, they beat Ohio State. I mean, it's like Ohio State, Alabama, those schools. I mean, that's Georgia. I mean, you win a recruiting battle against those guys, against a kid from the state of Texas where Ohio State recruits well. I think that makes a statement, even with Beamer's previously existing relationship.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm responding to a contact of mine about something. Anyway, so yeah, we look at a guy like Stogner and try to, I say football fans in general. Mm-hmm. And you just see like this big white dude, 6'6", 250, and be like, oh, George Kittle, Travis Kelce. But like, I think he's bigger than both of those guys. Like height, weight wise, I think he's actually got more mass than both of them. I don't know how fast he is compared to like Kelce, who can really run. And I'm not sure what Kittle's numbers are that way, but I mean, those are two of arguably the top two tight ends in the NFL. And I think this guy has a chance to, if he comes in and produces this year and is gone after the season's over, I would think that he's going to warrant consideration for a very high round draft pick. I mean, the tight end position is it's got some value in the NFL, and obviously does in this offense or this team's philosophy, I guess, the head coach's philosophy with the position and what he wants it to be within his offense, whoever the coordinator is. So I think he's going to come in and have a chance to be heavily featured, used in a lot of different ways, whether he's, inline, attached, split out, flex, moving around. A lot of the things we've seen Nick Muse do, but he frankly is just going to be better doing them. I mean, Nick Muse, good player. like you said, he probably should have gotten some more touches this year. Maybe he'll get a bunch in the bowl game. But, I mean, this guy is kind of another level player. And, I don't want to sit here and say he's more talented than Hayden Hurst, who was a first-round draft pick. But
I was about to go there. And I love Hayden Hurst.
Than Hayden Hurst.
I love Garnet Thor. But in the passing game, he's probably a little bit more like, I don't know. And Hayden, unfortunately for Hayden, his last season, They did. You've heard this story before. He wasn't used that properly. In fact, some people that were on the staff couldn't figure out why, but they kind of made him block the whole time. But this is a different. You kind of made the right comparison there. He's like those guys that have gone to Notre Dame over the years. And you said Travis Kelce, who played at Cincinnati, obviously, and. This is there was a guy at Notre Dame named Kyle Rudolph a few years back. Mm-hmm. This guy kind of reminds me of, but he's, these days, these guys at tight end, they can be, sometimes they're faster and bigger and out of Texas too. The high schools out there, like I said, they do 7-on-7 all 365 days a year. And you can get guys with extremely, extremely good skill. Mark Andrews, who played at Oklahoma, is kind of a comparison as well. I remember when I was doing national recruiting, I went to Arizona, of all places. This is where Mark Andrews was from. He ended up going to Oklahoma and seeing this kid. And he was built a lot like Austin Stogner, kind of that tall, kind of looks like a power forward almost, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Mark Andrews had a tremendous career at Oklahoma, and he's still killing it with the Ravens. So that kind of guy. And so, man, oh man, you have a target there for him. Josh Vann is coming back. Marshawn Lloyd, I talked to a source today. He's in a good place to come back. Don't know about Kevin Harris yet, but you still have Rashad Amos, Juba McDowell, Jaheim Bell. Obviously, was a very, very happy person today. He kind of almost gave it away on Twitter when we were kind of almost breaking this news or something like that. He kind of alluded to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that's pretty good. So 2 big pickups tonight, Stone Blanton earlier today, but Shane Beamer tweeted out 3 welcome homes. You're speculating. I'll tell you, I think the third one's Xavier Short, who's supposed to announce tomorrow. But I don't know that for sure. What's your take on who the third welcome home that Beamer tweeted about tonight? Because Beamer clarified that's 4 for today.
Yeah, that would be my guess. Informed, speculative guess / opinion. I'll stop talking. Yeah, I think that's who it's going to be. The App State kid App State commitment wide receiver, 3-star wide receiver, who's kind of on the board as an H-back type. So think like Jaheim Bell and what we saw him do this season. Very similar type of role as what they've envisioned for him and pitched to him and what they're hoping to get him to come play if he flips from App State tomorrow night. And a guy who, I mentioned Brian Doan a little while ago, JC, and I was talking to Doan a little earlier this evening about Xavier Short and he's very high on him. So I don't know if we'll necessarily see him get a bump in the 24/7 ratings, like what he's rated by 24/7, but I know that one of our national guys who has a voice in that room when it comes time to do those ratings is very pro Xavier Short, and I'm looking at his profile now. And 24/7, we've got him as an 85, rated as an 85, and I believe when I was talking to Doan, he mentioned 87 was what his opinion was where he thought he should be rated. So maybe that will change and he'll get a little bit of a bump at some point, and we could see Xavier Short if he commits to South Carolina. As a guy who ends up with a higher rating at some point down the road, or if he doesn't, then he stays with App State, and I think he still probably will have a higher rating because Doan thinks that highly of him. And
App State puts people in the NFL too, man. So,
and they beat Power 5 programs on occasion as well.
Yeah. So exactly. They've done pretty well. Here's the thing, and I don't get it about composite. And I would hope that someone in the recruiting industry would pick this up. You've got him 19th in the state behind a lot of guys who aren't going to play Division I football. And that's just kind of the way it works because some guys have, they got early offers and maybe fell off a little bit, like a Zan Dunham from Chester, Zach Chalmers from Newberry. I have no idea what's going on there. Xavier Chaplin is going to Virginia Tech, obviously, but I think in the state this cycle, he's at least a top 15 guy. And I wouldn't say that if he didn't have a 4.5 40-yard dash and like a 40-inch vertical, and you watch the guy on film, and he's just a ball player. And so, in my opinion, I think he probably needs to be a little higher, but we'll see what happens there. I mean, they got Jaden McGowan is the number 6 overall prospect in the state. I know Jaden's really fast, Hale, but you've seen him in person. How does he compare size-wise to Xavier Short?
Jaden McGowan is not much bigger than I am, if at all. So much smaller than Xavier Short. Now I'm looking at the the rankings, and it's kind of funny to me that Short's teammate Bennett Galloway, who's a running back committed to NC State, is ranked ahead of him, not only on 24/7 but in the composite. Offensive lineman named Nick Williams, same. He's not a Chapin guy, but I don't know why he's rated ahead of Xavier Short. Probably say the same thing about Xavier Chaplin and E.J. Evatt for sure, and Zach Chalmers and Zan Dunham, who is going to probably play at South Carolina State as a quarterback or maybe linebacker at Hampton. So, yeah, I'm with you that Xavier Short needs to see a little bump in those state rankings for sure. And big Jaden McGowan fan, too. I mean, that dude, he's state champion sprinter in the 100 and 200 and, runs extremely fast. But yeah, he's 5'8", 170 on a very good day, I think. I don't know if he's either one of those numbers, but Xavier Short is certainly all 6'2", 210 pounds. That dude's rock solid.
Yeah, it reminds me a little kind of like I don't know, because Pat didn't really test or anything coming out of high school because he was one of the few guys Steve Spurrier recruited by himself the whole time he's at South Carolina. One was Pat DeMarco, and one was Michael Scarnecchia. and it was just a head ball coach. Hey, we're taking this guy. Well, shoot, it's Chris DeMarco's nephew. We're going to our son or whatever, nephew. And so they took Pat. Pat didn't really test or anything, but, kind of that same size. And I guess if Pat had tested, he'd probably have tested pretty well in terms of, what Short's done. But, kind of like that kind of guy, H-back type. Really looking forward. I think you could have made an argument for him, Hale, early. But the Gamecocks were really in on Oscar Delp at tight end. They thought they had a really good shot, and they held off. But this is the kind of guy I tell people in Xavier Short, I'm like, this is the kid that'll go to App State, and you're watching App State on a Wednesday night, and you're going, how in the hell did that kid get out of Columbia? So I think that's pretty good. Okay, so wrapping up here, Theo Weiss. You know who I'm talking about?
Wheezy.
Is his last name Wheezy? That's
I don't know, but it sounds better than Weiss.
I know. Definitely.
I don't know.
What do you? I mean, here's another name that just sort of has popped up. A lot of speculation out there. The Gamecocks will get involved with him. Now, he hit the portal a while back. He's not a kid I've heard very much about at all.
Yeah, I don't know that there's been much going on there with him in South Carolina. I could be totally wrong, but I don't think there's been a ton happening. But they do need some playmakers on the outside of receivers. So
yeah, I kind of think Spencer Rattler will probably help a little with that, don't you think?
Probably so. Yeah,
seems like the type, and it just seems like the type of kid when you watch his highlights and you watch him play, he's the type of kid that I think could really, he's the type of kid that I think could help draw some kids in, right? So that's the deal there. All right, Hale, thanks for joining the Inside the Gamecocks podcast today. I'm sure we'll talk again this week, man, because it's early signing and Gamecocks are trucking towards a top 15 class on 24/7 Sports now. In the team rankings, we do have a feature where they include the transfers. So the Gamecocks have the number 5 transfer class, the number 16 high school class, number 15 overall. Heck of a job by Shane Beamer and staff. And just when things were looking really rough last week, this happens. And I have a feeling, Hill, that this maybe not, but this may have a residual effect to where your job gets a little bit busier than you maybe anticipated in the next 48 hours.
Yeah. I think when I woke up this morning, I wasn't really expecting things to get this nutty. I thought we could just cover Stone Blanton and go watch a little practice, get some VIP room stuff up, and enjoy a nice night on the couch. But silly me, right? Who knows what's going to happen over these next couple of days? No
doubt. Well, at least it's fun again. All right, Hale, appreciate you joining us and appreciate all you here on the Inside the Gamecocks podcast. JC Sherbert signing off on an emergency pod.